Hey everyone, welcome back to another Godzilla battling video, and today we are talking about what the best off-meta units are in Godzilla Battleline right now. Now, few housekeeping things before we get started. The top row, those are what I think are the best off-meta units. Gigan as a leader, not as a unit, and then Megaguirus, Anguirus, and Freezing Sonde. Those I think are the best off-meta units. The bottom row, the Kamacuras, Kiryu, Gigan, and Girth, I think that they are also pretty good off-meta units, but that's more my opinion. The top row is like a for sure. The bottom is in my opinion. And I want to talk about the definitions of meta and off-meta, because a lot of people will come to me and be like, Melee, I built this is my meta deck, this is my meta deck, and it's like nothing that is meta, it just happens to work for them really well. So meta is generally considered in most gaming like spheres whatever the pinnacle of like PvP is, the pinnacle like thing, item, character, unit, ability, whatever in the game that does the most for your team and is virtually like unbeatable. Not unbeatable, but like it's generally accepted as the best things in the game, like Batra in this with his boost, definitely meta. Biollante with her boost and her insane AoE, that's meta. Super X's range and the damage it can do, meta. Psychic Core's healing, meta. Those are the four meta units, and I would even say what is it called? The Super X, less so than the other three, but those basically have been the four units defining the meta for the last few months. Off meta is usually separated into two camps. There are some people believe that any unit that isn't meta is off meta, and that's generally not what I go by. When I talk about off meta characters, I'm talking about not meta, but could be meta. So characters that are not commonly seen, but can be used in a creative enough way that they can circumvent the meta or do something that other units wouldn't be able to do within the current meta, which Anguirus is a prime example of. So let's just start talking about these characters, right? And I'll start with Anguirus, I just brought him up. Anguirus has a crazy health pool. Mine is on the screen right now. He's really low. He's like a 12, but at level 20 and above, Anguirus is really putting in work. Like, let me tell you, man, like he'll eventually get like 4,400 health. I think that's at level 30. Really great off tank as well for G89. G89 generally is considered the best tank, except he is 7 cost, and with the way the game has been going, our units that are getting out of the game are costing more and more. So Anguirus for 4 had its cost lowered from 5 to 4. Insanely valuable, right? Had its health buffed at every level by 500 points. Insanely valuable. Anguirus, basically, a lot of people, what they do in the beginning of matches now, they will drop their evolution units with an Anguirus, and Anguirus just takes the brunt of all the attacks, and it buys their evolutions enough time to evolve. Even Godzilla Terrestris, one of the hardest units to get evolved, right? After the health regen nerf, put Anguirus with him, and Anguirus just let him take the hits, and Godzilla Terrestris can snipe from the back. You're kind of guaranteed an Evo, especially if your Anguirus is a high level. Like I said, mine is really, not too strong. I haven't leveled him up since Season 1. But he is the #1 unit on my radar to level up next, because he's looking quite potent. I do not think he is meta. Obviously, I think he's off meta, but I think he is on the top of off meta. He's a very strong unit. Next, I'll go to the Sonde. It's right there on the screen. Freezing Sonde, it's been pretty good for a while, and I still think that it is actually very solid. It's definitely not being used as much now as it was because of, Psychic Chorus's buff and everything like that. Sonde was pretty prevalent, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. But it definitely isn't a bad pick. Being able to slow down units and buy your other characters more time to attack is always a really great thing. This just isn't a character or spell or whatever we want to call it, an ability that you see in many decks these days. However, when it is put into a deck, it can be used for great effect. It's kind of like the Kamacuras, but a little bit better, because the Kamacuras, obviously you're going to die to AoEs. Freezing Sonde, you don't have to worry about that. It does a mass freeze, and the more that you level it, the better the freeze is going to be. So definitely a good off meta pick for sure if you're looking for a cheap thing to start slowing enemies down. Or if you don't have a Manila leveled up, or you're just a Manila hater and you don't want to level up Manila, totally understand. He definitely is ugly, so if you don't want to use him on the field, this is an amazing substitute as well. And I'm pretty sure it also stuns for longer. So next, talk about Megaguirus. Megaguirus is an absolute queen in this game. What hasn't she been able to do recently, right? Megaguirus is one of those units that was slept on very early on, but quickly has risen to like the top most of A tier, especially late game play. She is super beefy. Her DPS is solid. She's a melee flying unit, which we don't have too many of those. The only other one I think we have is Rodan 64, and he is just going to get butchered by Megaguirus, right? Health pool is really nice. It's pretty much the tank, one of the tankiest flyers that we have, and for it to be a 3-star is great. In addition to it being really, really tanky, you obviously have the slow. The slow is so powerful and so large, and on defense especially, Megaguirus is an amazing character to be utilizing. This is one that I always recommend the new players build up as soon as they get her. She is probably my favorite, one of my favorite units, probably my favorite off-meta unit in this list, but her and Anguirus is definitely, out of all the characters you see on screen, those are the two off-meta characters that I think are just a tier above the rest. They are like so close to being meta, but they don't make it, but they're so good. And when you get either of these two, Anguirus or Megaguirus, start upgrading them because you will see major benefits later on. Gigan leader, I don't really got to explain it too much. Meta unit leader is obviously G89 being used a ton, right? Gigan, I think, is the next best because of the rushdown ability is really solid, and it's a 3-star, so you can level it up really fast. There's obviously other really good 4-star leaders, like Biollante is an amazing leader, but Biollante, in my opinion, recently is better utilized on the field than as a leader, especially after the leader nerf. Not that the nerf made her any worse, it's just Biollante on the field is just way more, you know, doing way more for you. But Gigan on the field, not so much. But Gigan as a leader, though, decent health. The ability is really solid, and it can help you make a really strong push, especially if you have an Anguirus or Megaguirus on your team or a G89. Having units rush up on your opponent with a ton of health, you know, that's going to take a lot for them to burst down, especially if your Anguirus is like level 30. So Gigan, pretty much the best off-meta leader that isn't a 4-star, because a lot of the 4-star leaders are better utilized on the field, to be honest. So that is all of the meta, or off-meta characters, I should say, that I think are the best. Now, I'm going to talk about the ones that are, in my opinion, some of the best, but obviously there's a lot of arguments to be had with them, and I feel like I could have put Mothra in here, there just wasn't enough spaces on the board. So, Kamacuras, not really seeing a ton of play by a lot of people these days, just because the AoE is rampant between Biollante, between King Ghidorah, Des Ghidorah, Godzilla Earth's piercing, Hedera, who else has AoE that is really strong? Dimension Tide. There's another one I'm forgetting. Someone has some kind of AoE ability, but it doesn't matter. Kamacuras aren't really seeing a lot of play for that reason. However, they're still very, very good at stalling other characters. King Caesar's come rushing, stall him with Kamacuras. A G89 is coming down, hit him with the Kamacuras, and he's got to work through them while they do some chip damage. Mogera comes to your leader, drop Kamacuras down, right? Take down that Mogera. Same thing with Kiryu, so they've definitely seen less play than they normally did. I still think they're off meta. They've always kind of been off meta. I still think that they are, especially in certain situations. However, in terms of doing a really big push with your team, they've definitely fallen off. But Kamacuras for defense, very, very, very solid unit. Kiryu is probably the one on this list that I would argue the most is the least off meta. Only because with the advent of the Psychic Chorus buff, Kiryu's damage can easily be negated unless you don't, unless you have Kiryu at a high level. That being said, new players will get a free Kiryu, and then when this video is up, there's a Kiryu event where they're going to be able to get 2 more Kiryu. So having a level 3 Kiryu early game is really, really strong. Definitely not one of the meta units, but being able to take a Kiryu up into the higher ranks is really good, and even in a team fight, Kiryu is really solid. If you can time it so you can drop him after a Psychic Chorus is used, you're going to do a lot of damage, right? He's a monumental help to your team. You just have to be careful, because once that Psychic Chorus comes back, it can easily negate Kiryu's damage, and if that wasn't the case, I think Kiryu could be meta, but he's just being held back by his damage at this point, but he's very versatile. Next is Gigano 4, which I totally think is being slept on by the community. Mine is really low level, but a lot of high level ones are performing very, very well. The stun from a long distance is incredible. He's a very cheap cost. He's 4 cost, which is also amazing. And he has really high, attack speed. His DPS is a little low because his damage isn't very high, but he can attack like every 1.4 seconds. So especially on units that have a really slow attack time, like Anguirus or G89, if Gigan isn't the primary focus of their attack, he's going to put in a lot, and I mean a lot of damage. He's like super X, but up close. As long as he is not the focus of your enemy, he's just going to be dumping damage into them, and that is exactly what you want to see from a low attack. You know, he's basically an attacker, and his stun is really good. Overall, super strong unit. Gigano for my seal of approval off meta. I think at a high level, like level 7 or like 5, 6, 7 or whatever, he's going to be very, very potent. And finally, Godzilla Earth. My boy, Girth, very expensive, definitely not meta, mostly because of his cost, but he's a very strong unit as well. He's a unit that I think fits the definition perfectly of off meta that I gave earlier. That is, you know, it's a unit that by any conventional means, you know, uncommon means, can perform really well with the current meta. He just isn't accepted as the most competitive option. And I think if you definitely play Earth right in the proper deck, he is a very creative, you know, problem to give your opponent, because they got to solve that. He's a ton of health. Mine is really low, and I would like mine to be higher. I'm not even going to use mine on the field until mine is level 5. So, you know, he provides your opponent with a very, very, very large problem as soon as he drops on the board. He's going to have at level 5 like 4,000 some odd health, so very strong at a low level. And especially lower rank, and even in the high rank, that takes a lot of damage to burst down. You know, Anguirus at level 30 is 4,400 health or something like that. Earth at level 5 is around the same, right? He's like 41 or 4,200 health, so very, very solid unit all around. And he fills the same role as Anguirus, but Anguirus is way cheaper, obviously. And Earth, you kind of have to put your deck around him, while Anguirus is definitely a plug-and-play character. But with that being said, these are the units that I think are probably the best off-meta units right now. I want to include Mothra in here. She's also really good. She's the evolution, and then she does like 10 ticks of damage. Her DPS, gnarly, especially with the Batra buff. So honorable mention Mothra. I just couldn't fit her on here at all. But with that being said, that is all the off-meta talk I got for you today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you all on the next one. Bye-bye.